what that actually means
So,
in the Orthodox Church.
so Vladika, when you spoke about that,
Yeah.
what happened to the diatribes?
Well, I don't know. I haven't got an answer to that.
I think one thing I was going to
But
say...
here's the point, though, that in any of these issues, the answer, I mean, the theological answer that is really Christian is much more simple and straightforward. It doesn't require demonizing or stirring up hatred against anyone. Why people stir up the hatred and the fear of the other is somehow they don't think they can survive on their own merits, on what they have to offer. So they have to demonize what anybody else has to offer because they don't really have faith that what they have to offer has the strength and the power to see them through.
But then part of our task is to affirm their dignity deep enough so they no longer have to go there.
Right, we have to reaffirm the dignity and humanity of everyone. And every human being is an image and likeness of Christ. And when people say that, oh, Buddhism is a demonic parody of Christianity or something, because there are similarities, but the similarities are there because Christian monasticism borrowed from the Buddhists. Buddhists were there first. And some of the things, some of the conclusions that Buddhism came to in trying to examine the human condition would be something that we could identify with because we're both studying the same human condition.
That's right.
And because we're both studying the same human condition, the same human problems, if we do so thoughtfully and sincerely, we're bound to come to some of the same conclusions.
I was going to say, one of the great 16th century works in England was Richard Hooker's Laws of Ecclesiastical Polity. And one of the people he had to confront and who challenged him and chased him around England theologically, philosophically, were the Puritans. And in his introduction of the Laws of Ecclesiastical Polity, he lists psychologically the mindset that people live within, by which they see the other as the enemy. And he starts with, first of all, you have to see life in terms of black and white. Then you see yourself as in the light, and the other is in the dark. Then you move from using language of we are the bearers of the light and you demonize the other. Then you begin to act on that. And to reverse that very process is what we might call the mote beam syndrome, is where we're willing to say, in fact, I have to look at the beam in my own eyes and stop and be willing to see perhaps the mote in the other. So it's almost the process of reversing a way of seeing oneself as just having the mote and the other the beam. Say, I have the beam, the other has the mote if it's there. And I think getting back to David's point is that both in religion and politics you can get the tribalism of the left and right. But what undergirds that, I teach courses in ideology and politics, and I get into this in religion also. But again, it's sort of the foundation way of seeing ideology, whether it's religion, politics, is the simplistic way of seeing life in terms of categories of right, wrong, left, right, black, white. And then one identifies himself, obviously the positive, sees the other as the enemy. And it's how, in terms of elementary education, gently, graciously, where you find people like that. Now obviously it's hard to do it in big mass rallies where people are whipped up emotively, rhetorically into action. But how you encourage people to begin to go a little deeper into seeing both in their own soul, these issues is a little more ambiguous. Their understanding of their faith, whether it's religion or a political ideology, is a little more complex. And seeing the other not as a symbol, which I think Dave is absolutely spot on in that, not as a symbol, but as a complex human being who is in the midst of their own pilgrimage and life journey. And that's where I did my doctoral thesis on Martin Buber and his whole I and Now tradition, and particularly living through the German Jewish context and then the Jewish Palestinian context. His natural tendency would be obviously to demonize the German, or as a Jew within a Zionist context post-World War II, to demonize the Palestinians. He refused to do that. And there are a couple of courageous incidences in his life where in fact he would walk the extra mile to be tyrannical towards the Germans, and went the extra mile to embrace the Palestinians, which caused many of the ideological Jewish Zionists to turn on him and see him as a betrayer of the people.
Sure.
In the case of the events in the murder of people in Arizona, there is another voice that comes into play, and that is the voice of Obama at the funeral. And it was interesting to me as I watched that to see that here Obama didn't play in the left or the right. He didn't play in those silos at all. He didn't participate in that way of framing the issue. He simply didn't participate in it. He fasted from it. You know, we have that lovely tradition in Christianity to teach us to fast with our mind and our eyes and our bodies. So he fasted from it. And what did he do? Well, he helped people contemplate a little bit the humanity of the situation of people gathered to talk about politics. The humanity of that. The simple humanity of that. No matter what their differences are or what have you. Coming together to speak about our common life together. He helped people contemplate the Congresswoman's, the reality of her life. And it restored a kind of human scale to this matter. And of course, he pulled forward the young girl who was killed. And pulled forward her aspiration, not her ambition, her aspiration, that someday she also could participate in the extraordinary work of politics. He pulled that forward, and in that way completely changed the terms of reference. Now, it only lasted a short time, but that's an example, it seems to me, of finding another way. I also thought, as I paid attention to this unfolding, and I don't mean to be romantic about this, but it's always amazing to me that some people, in the midst of such an extraordinary event, that they don't simply weep when they listen to somebody pick up on it from an ideological perspective. And don't simply say, but oh, please, my friend, please, take a moment. Take a moment. Look at who these people are. These are real-life human beings who walk in the world, who have struggles like you and me. But instead, this taking refuge so quickly in these ideological silos and doing everything we can to preserve them and showing no vulnerability, showing no real human vulnerability in the face of what we really hate. I understand hating it, but I also think that one of the few ways of breaking through that is not going to your own silo, showing your vulnerability, contemplating, reflecting on the humanity of the people that are there, and pushing back, in that way, pushing back this kind of ideological virulence, using a language which is so much more human than any of that kind of language ever is.
I think that's a great summary, because we're going to have to come to an end now. Do you want to say something now in conclusion? Make a little concluding statement?
Well, I think in one ways there's, and David used, I think, a very interesting word earlier, is the contemplative. Because as humans, we're complex, we're divided, we're walking